Hey guys, this is Luke with Luke F1 Fantasy Strategy, back at you with another video. We're back, we're recharged, and we are pumped for a sprint weekend at Miami, which is going to kick off a triple header. So in this video, we're going to help to get your F1 fantasy team locked in. We're going to be looking at key transfers ins, key transfers out, focusing on points, focusing on budget boosting. We'll take a quick look and keep an eye on Imola, which will be the race after this one. And I'll also kind of give you a sneak preview into my video plans for this week. So probably in the middle of the week, hopefully Wednesday, I'm going to be dropping my Miami team thoughts, as well as letting you know whether I'm going to go ahead with Limitless for this week. So click subscribe, put your notifications on. Don't forget to watch out for that video. And in this video, also kind of stick around to the end. We're going to do a few shout outs, take a quick look at my league leaderboard and see who is the new leader going into Miami. So without any more delay, not wasting any more time, let's get you going. And first up is our drivers. So without too much surprise for everyone, Oscar Piastri is the A+ number one buy for your fantasy teams this week. Once again, he is looking incredibly strong, always has a chance to qualify first row. We have the sprint as well this weekend, so extra points are available, but ultimately needs to score over minus 19 points to secure a minor increase. So barring DNF, Piastri is definitely going to be a solid choice for points and budget into Miami. I also have Lando in as a buy this week. He comes back into the buy. Again, a couple of strong performances so far between Bahrain and Saudi, so carrying decent points. Again, has to score over minus 13 points, or sort of over 14 points to score a minor increase. And again, still kind of looks like he is strong performance, very fast. He won the Grand Prix in Miami last year. So if you're looking for some good vibes, looking for a differential from Piastri, then maybe from Lando's history of winning here last year, maybe someone that you might consider to put into your team for this week. Going into our B tiers, we have Ollie Behrman, again, very strong buy, certainly from a budget building perspective, needing to see points of over -4 to score a minor increase, 4 points for a max increase. So he has had those spiky performances, scoring 22 points in Bahrain, scored 5 points in Saudi. So this is the last race that he can kind of carry that 22 points from Bahrain. So definitely is another one for good budget building. And if we see another good performance from Haas and Ollie Behrman, especially on a sprint weekend when more points are available, then he is going to continue to be a long-term hold for your fantasy teams. Similarly with Isaac Hadjar, again, looking really good for a budget increase this week. Just needs to score over 3 points. Hasn't really had a spike week for a couple of weeks, so this Miami sprint would be a good opportunity for him to secure some extra points and maybe make his window for opportunity and increases in Imola and beyond into Monaco a little bit more interesting or more tantalizing. So definitely one to watch, and certainly hoping for another strong performance from Isaac Hadjar this week. Now, I have Liam Lawson coming into my buy category for this week, and then this kind of comes in from a few of us that had Gasly and Doohan in our teams from Saudi Arabia. So certainly we're needing some transfer options for those guys. And now Lawson is having a decent performance, 11 points in Bahrain, 5 in Saudi. So he needs between 2 and 8 points to secure budget increases. Again, with a sprint weekend, coming up. Definitely opportunities for more points. So if he does score big, gets a spiky performance in Miami, then he definitely looks like a strong hold for Imola as well. So if you are considering doing an Imola chip in, so if you're using your Limitless chip in Imola and you're looking to sort of optimize your team and getting rid of some Alpine assets, then Lawson is a strong candidate for that. Next buy is the Spanish maestro, Fernando Alonso. Now, there was a few transfers in last week, some umming and ahhing of whether we should put him in. And again, Alonso, despite that, that Aston Martin's still not looking very quick, he's kind of got those early DNFs out of the way or out of his score on his cumulative 3-race budget. So 5 points in Bahrain, 7 points in Saudi. He did take a -0.2 million decrease in Saudi. And so right now he's kind of needing sort of over 5 points for a small increase, over 11 points for a big increase, which is definitely achievable on a sprint weekend. And again, if he does have a spiky performance this week, then he definitely looks like a good candidate for a Limitless team in Imola. So again, if you're looking to get some weaker assets out, Alonso, especially at his price at being 6.2 million, he is looking like a strong buy for this week. Now, moving into our constructors, no surprise again, we have McLaren. Just Lando and Oscar just really dominating. They are strong candidates for front row on both the sprint and the qualifying and the qualifying for the race. Of course, we don't get any points for sprint qualifying, but we do get to take a look at sprint qualifying before we set our teams for the sprint. So, as Lando showed last week, even if one of them is going to qualify out of position, they can make up some of those points by just having just such a rocket ship of a car that they're going to come through that field quite easily, overtake points, positions gain, all that fun stuff. So McLaren are probably the must-have A-tier constructor. And we have Ferrari coming into this mix. I've spent a few weeks in the cell category due to those that double DSQ in China, but we're well past that now. And they've had some upgrades. Charles is looking a little bit more comfortable in that car as well. But I think the biggest differentiator that Ferrari have right now is due to those fastest pit stop points. Like, they have taken 4 out of the 5 fastest pit stop points to date. And had it not been for the DSQs in China, I believe they would have swept that as well. So really, in some ways you could say they are 5 for 5 at this moment in time. And with our upcoming races, we have Imola, which is obviously in Italy, and then we have Monaco, where Charles won last year. So there are a couple of strong races. It's not Monza, it's not the home Grand Prix for Ferrari and Imola, but being sort of in Italy, getting that home crowd, they have some strong, some tracks that are quite suited to them coming up. So they are looking very strong as a buy. Haas, now if you haven't already got Haas and you're still continuing to think about them, again, for this race, they're looking like a good buy. From a points perspective, needing to score basically, over minus 25 points to score. So unless they get a double DNF at some point over the weekend, they are set to increase by the maximum. They're holding on to that 40 points drop from Bahrain. So that will definitely help them out a lot. And again, the sprint weekend has an opportunity to give them another spiky week. And if they do, then they again continue to look like they'll be a strong hold for the next 2 or 3 races after that. Next buy is VCarb, Racing Bulls. And again, coming up on the performance of, they're not really having any DNFs right now. Hajar's performing well. Liam's starting to look more comfortable in that car as well. And again, at a price of 9.8, so they're still fairly affordable in terms of our B-tier constructors for what they're going to produce you an output. 22 points in Bahrain, 18 in Saudi. So they're fairly steady, and they're not as sort of risk adverse as maybe like a Haas who had that 40 drop from Bahrain. So, they're kind of showing that they've got more consistent performance. Potentially they're more stable. So again, if you're looking for a differentiator from Haas, you don't have as much budget to kind of get into a Haas, which is at 10 million, then definitely consider the Racing Bulls as your second B-tier constructor. And then lastly, I have Aston Martin that have creeped into the buy category from a constructor basis. And this is also because when you look at their performances, they've had 18 in Bahrain, 11 in Saudi. So again, pretty stable. And they do come in cheaper than your VCarb and Haas, so coming in at 8.3 million. And so for this week in Miami, between -6 and 1 points, and you will see an increase in their budget. Points haul, though, it's probably somewhat relying a lot on Alonso than it is Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll's kind of completely disappeared, kind of gone missing. But there are opportunities, there are paths to points if he continues to sort of continue in that P19, P20, and then there's always potential for him to, get positions gained from drivers in front of him, from crashing out, but also has that ability to maybe get some overtake points as well without losing points from starting that far in the grid. So Aston, if you don't quite have the budget to get into a Haas or a VCarb because you're diverting some budget towards your A-tier drivers, then Aston have definitely come into the mix. All right, so now that completes the buys. Looking into our holes, starting with the drivers, we have George Russell. Again, needing between 13 and 33 points to see a budget increase. It's getting a little bit tougher. He's only really seeing 0.1 rises. So, in comparison to an Oscar Piastri, who's pretty much nailed on for a 0.3 million budget increase. Piastri is definitely getting you a better balance of points and budget. Russell's not quite getting you as much. And a lot of his early success this year has been to, him getting a lot of finishes in that top 5, but more so obviously getting like qualifying quite high and getting sort of podiums in the top 3. So he's definitely a hold for me if you have a team makeup that you have a double A-tier driver and Russell is your second A-tier. I'm not as comfortable as having Russell in as my single A-tier driving. I have the 2 times DRS on him. But he has won in America. He won in Vegas. So there's definitely some upside for him. But I think it's also kind of keeping an eye on what Ferrari are doing. And if Ferrari are starting to show improvements, especially from their upgrades, if Charles starts to sort of outperform Russell, if Charles starts to get that top 3 position, then Russell's value starts to come down a little bit because he's never really anywhere near fastest lap. He's never really anywhere near driver of the day. So he's kind of losing out on some bonus points there. So his path to points may start to become a little bit more difficult as the weeks go on. But certainly in a week where potentially people have had Russell from Saudi and they are into a Limitless chip this weekend, then Russell is a very fine hold for this week. Similarly to Antonelli, I believe he doesn't really have a spiky week carrying him into this week. Yeah, he's kind of got 14 points in Bahrain, 15 in Saudi. So he's kind of looking to need somewhere between 24 and 42 points to secure a price increase. So, definitely doable on a sprint weekend. But we're kind of needing a spiky weekend from Antonelli to kind of keep him in our thoughts for a A-tier driver. He might continue to kind of see a few, he might sort of fall into this pattern where he may lose a bit of budget, like 0.1s for the next little bit. And so, again, if he was part of your team and you had some budget constraints, you couldn't get into Russell, and if you have Antonelli and you're thinking of limitlessing in Miami, then I do think he's a strong hold for you to go through and play that chip. Going into the B tiers, we have Gabriel Bortoleto. Now, this one we're going to talk a little bit about, but certainly for Miami, he is a stronghold. I know a lot of us had him in our team for this week. Bortoleto needs between 6 and 10 to see a price increase, and again, he's had the floor of 4.5 million, so he's not going to lose you any value. But if he does hit that value and he does get between 6 and 10 points and he sees a price increase, now he exposes you for a potential price decrease in Imola, with him maybe needing between sort of 8 to 12 points, roughly, to sort of see another price increase. So there's definitely some caution a little bit with Bortoleto. If you are thinking of not limitlessing in Miami and you have him in your team, but you're thinking about limitless in Imola, you do have to consider, like, will he be a price asset that would decrease for you in Imola, being a low overtake track, low points available there. So if he's in your team for this week, though, and you're thinking of limitless, then I think this is probably the better week to use Bortoleto for the limitless strategy. Looking at next one, we have Alex Albon. Again, Albon had a decent performance in Saudi with 10 points, 15 in Bahrain. He saw a minus 0.2 decrease in Saudi. And that's kind of put him in a position where he needs to score between 10 and 21 points to see a price increase, which then if Williams are continuing to push for that top 10, if they can do some team orders and team strategy like they did in Saudi, where Carlos and Albon just kind of formed a DRS train and protected their position. And if there's two sort of top 8s available for the sprint and the race, then he definitely could have a strong output as well. So yeah, definitely think Albon is a good buy for you, but we may just kind of see his price flip-flopping. He's kind of like in this position where he needs to continue to see strong performances to kind of keep his value and his interest up there. There's always a chance that Williams can sort of drop out of that top 10 and he can have a low week as well. So just kind of caution a little bit on his budget. That might just flip-flop here and there, especially when we go into tracks with lower overtakes such as Imola and Monaco, which is kind of coming up. So if you really think that Albon has a good, strong performance in Miami, then definitely keep him in, but definitely be prepared to maybe swapping him out for future weeks as it goes on. And then the last hold would be Esteban Ocon. I guess for some of us, he could be thrown into a buy, especially if you were like me and you sold Ocon for Gasly last week. But certainly want to prop up the guys that made the right decision and sort of keeping Ocon on your team for last week. Now, he did lose 0.2 budget, so it wasn't like the decision to Gasly was a complete write-off. I still stand by the analysis, the informed decision to put Gasly in based on how strong he was looking in the practices. But yeah, it is important to point out that Ocon did lose 0.2 last week. But again, on a sprint weekend, he's kind of carrying the 15 points from Bahrain into Miami, so needing between 4 and 12 points to secure a price increase. So definitely should be good for that this week. And then if he does sort of secure those higher points, I think he gets sort of into the double digits over 12, then he sort of needs between 9 and 17 to secure increases in Imola, which then again starts to kind of think about, is it going to be achievable at that point on low overtake tracks? So another one to kind of watch out for. Maybe you kind of put him into your team for this week. Take the points, take the budget increase. But sort of if anything goes wrong, know that he may be a sell for Imola, depending on how things go. So Mercedes, I still kept them in the hold category for this week. again, as an independent asset, they're looking super strong. Like over minus 40 points, we'll see you a minor increase, over minus 18 points for the massive increase. So definitely nailed on for a max increase of 0.3. And as I sort of said with Ferrari, it's like they may have lost a little bit of ground. Like Charles is starting to look a little bit stronger. You've got Ferrari sort of dominating the fastest pit stop points. So, but they are a hold for me. Like I think you may sort of choose to sort of sell a Mercedes to kind of go into a Ferrari. But again, there's a hold argument to be said here that if you had them from Saudi and you are planning to Limitless in Miami and you have Mercedes in your team, they are a very fine hold for that reason. If potentially you're looking to not Limitless in Miami and you're looking to sort of optimize your team and you have a transfer to use, then maybe you can consider a sell from Mercedes to Ferrari. So a little bit of context on that one. And just something to kind of watch out for too, with Ferrari on the rise, we kind of still need to sort of see both Russell and Antonelli outperforming Charles and Hamilton. But again, with that fastest pit stop points that Ferrari are getting, it kind of makes the gap between Antonelli and Hamilton or the drivers itself to kind of be super. It needs to be bigger to sort of to cover off that fastest pit stop points. Williams are a hold for me, so I know, again, big Williams fan like myself. There's some truthers out there who still have them in your teams, and they're a great team to continue to have. They had 13 points in Bahrain, 27 in Saudi, so definitely from a points perspective, they're doing great. They got you a 0.6 million increase in Saudi, needing to see between 2 and 16 points, and you're going to see another price increase. And again, like Williams, if they're continuing to look like the strongest constructor outside of that top four, if Albon and Sainz continue to get top 10s, they are pretty good for your team. Now, of course, their budget is higher. They're going to cost you 15.3 million. But again, no real need to sell them this week if you already have them in your team. And another spiky performance from them, and they should be strong holds for Imola and Monaco as well. Last constructor on this list will be the Alpine. Now, you know what? Despite that DNF from Gasly in Saudi, Alpine still are looking decent for an increase this week, needing to score over 6 points for a small, over 14 points for a big. And again, we kind of have to remember, like, it was just such an unlucky sort of crash for Pierre Gasly. And I would love to have seen how well they would have done in that race, knowing how fast Gasly has been in that car. So unfortunately, they still are looking good, and they don't look like a strong sell for me for Miami. Certainly, if you again are a limitlessing for Miami, then I think they are quite capable of getting those points. But another spiky week to sort of just try to cover off the Saudi minus 6 points that they got is needed in order for you to think of them as long-term holds for the future. So I think if you're limitlessing, they could be a hold. If you have them in your team and you're not limitlessing, they are a sell. Because I think we have to understand that minus 6 points is going to be on there until after Monaco. So depending on your budgets, if it depends on your transfers. If you have 2, if you have 3, you have to start prioritizing which one of those that you want to use to make the most of that. Now, in our sell category, looking at the drivers, we have Lewis Hamilton. So now, for Miami on its own, he needs to score between 11 and 32 and you'll see price increases. So it's more likely to kind of get you more of a 0.1 million increase, similar to a kind of Russell. There is some caution because Ferrari are going through upgrades. Lewis just really needs to kind of dig deep in himself and try to find some magic to kind of get the most out of that car. But there is performance in that car, kind of seeing what we see Charles doing. But his vibes are just not great. vibes of Leclerc great. So he kind of needs those upgrades to work for him. But I would say this: if you are limitlessing in Miami, I would definitely keep an eye on Lewis, because if he does end up just still not doing great in qualifying, with Miami being a decent track for overtakes, if he is someone that qualifies out of position, then he does seem like someone that I would consider for my Limitless team, to see if I can get some extra points from him from an overtake and points positions gained position. So that's my little tip on Lewis. Charles, I have as a sell, more so because I think you can kind of get better value for around his price value for a Piastri or a Russell. Russell's just got a little bit more history, a little bit more form this year so far. But I am definitely keeping a strong eye on Charles as being a differentiator to Russell, if I decide to go into a double A-tier driver position, if I start to switch into a budget building strategy post Miami. Again, Leclerc, I think, is pretty much a nailed-on selection for your Limitless team into Miami. But as a strict sort of asset, I would look at other options. I'll look at the other options for this week. He could do with another spiky performance. Like, would love to see him kind of get another podium, maybe a second place, just to try to kind of give us a bit more of a window of freedom to kind of push us into the triple header. But Monaco again, Leclerc won last year, going back to Italy for Imola, so there could be some good things coming for Ferrari and especially Leclerc. So yeah, we'll also get the benefit of seeing sprint qualifying to see. So at time of recording, it's a sell that could quickly turn into a buy depending on how good Charles looks later on this week. So keep an eye out for my videos later on in the week. Then I have Max as, again, a sell. We're just really relying on Max being the one that disrupts the McLaren domination. And he is kind of looking at probably that one that is most likely to do it. For me, just as a sell, you're definitely getting better value from Oscar over Max. And potentially you've got just a little bit more upside with Lando as well. So this is more just about biggest bang for buck on where you can get more points. Verstappen is probably your most difficult one to get your massive increase this week of 0.3. Needs to score over 45 points. So he's the one that needs the most out of the A-tier drivers. So that kind of tells you kind of where his point, where his value is versus his points output. So definitely more of a strategy position. That's why he's going to sell. But certainly if you feel the good vibes of Max, there's no harm in putting him in your team. And really, again, Max is probably the third. If you're going to pick a Limitless team, you're going to have Lando, Oscar, and definitely Max is that third choice there. So that's the context on him. And if you are thinking about Limitless too, he does kind of give you an option that maybe if you put your 2x on him and you just trust that he's going to have a good weekend, then he is one there. So maybe I'm a bit harsh. Maybe Max should have been in more of the hold category, but there we are. He's in the sell for now. All right, and then going into our sell. So color signs still a sell for me. Massive points needed to see an increase in budget. So 25 to 34. This race will be the last race that he carries that DNF from Bahrain. And then going forward, he'll be able to take advantage of the 12 points that he got in Saudi. So a spiky performance here in Miami is going to sort of start to bring color signs into our team decisions for Imola, maybe Monaco. Imola, maybe perhaps Monaco more likely. So I'm expecting a price decrease of 0.6 for signs, which I kind of put him at 9.5 million for Imola. So he starts to kind of get into that budget, range of where Ocon is, where Gasly is, and I start to now think of signs being in the Williams. Maybe he's the driver that I want to own. So I'm really hoping for a good performance from Sainz, get another spiky points weekend, and then all of a sudden I think he's a strong potential buy for Imola. Then we move into Gasly. Still reading from that really unlucky DNF in Saudi, but again, he's going to hold that DNF for a couple of races now. But would I still like to see some? What would really be helpful is really just to see Gasly just do another strong performance this weekend, where it kind of shows that he still has the pace, he still has that car's looking fast. So definitely kind of keeping an eye for Gasly. So who knows? Potentially he could be a buy for Monaco. He's going to see a couple of price decreases. Likely going to be at a price, probably around. Where's he going to be? He's probably going to be around, maybe 7.6, 7.8 million going into Monaco. And again, an experienced driver around that track, maybe someone that we could look to put in a team if you haven't suffered too much trauma from this past week. Yuki, again, for similar reasons, he's got that DNF from Saudi that's going to kind of keep him buried on our team thoughts for a couple more weeks here. So he's going to see some price decreases, likely going to be closer to maybe 14.5 million coming into Monaco. So still maybe quite high, quite pricey. It's going to be more expensive than Albon, more expensive than Sainz. But in the Red Bull, again, from a track like Monaco, a good qualifying, low overtake track, again, might be someone that could look for a good points haul there. But I think budget increase is going to be quite hard for Yuki for the foreseeable future. So not someone that I'm looking from both either a short-term or a long-term position. Lance just really has disappeared from F1 fantasy plans. You barely even see him on the F1 feeds right now. He's not really doing anything exciting in the race. 7 points in Bahrain, 1 in Saudi. Needs between 17 and 25 points to secure an increase in Miami. So again, it's doable on a sprint weekend. More points available, but I think we're going to likely see another price decrease. It's going to drop to 8.5 million. And then probably going to see it continue. So he's kind of in a bit of a free fall right now. And I don't think Stroll's going to come into my team thoughts until A, we start to see him just performing a little bit better, and B, that his price being, more closer into the 6 or 7 millions at this point in time. So Stroll, you are off my list for the foreseeable future. Jack Doohan I have as a sell. Again, I think at his price right now of being 5 million, he needs to score between 11 and 15 to see a price increase. But anything less than 11, he's going to see a price decrease. And anything less than 6, he's going to get a max decrease of 0.6, which will then put him at the floor of 4.5 million, which is something to think about. Because I think if you have him in your team, I would probably look to sell him. But I think he may then become a quick buy potential for Imola because he'll be at the floor. So I think there are better values at this point. Looking at Lawson, looking at Alonso, only being a million or so more than him at this moment in time. But he's definitely someone to kind of keep in your thoughts for kind of similar to Bortoleto, where if he just has a couple of decent performances, and maybe this Miami one will be the one where he kind of get you a few points. Maybe doesn't see a price increase, but then he can carry that weight into the next couple races, which may help some strategy ideas there. And then lastly, we have Nico Hülkenberg. Now, Nico just hasn't really shown enough magic. He's got the -20 from Bahrain, which is kind of definitely putting him out of our thoughts for Miami. Needs between 35 and 41 to see an increase. But again, another week, if he has a good sprint weekend, a bit spiky, he's likely going to see a price decrease of 0.6 again. So gets closer to that 6 million going into Imola and Monaco. So maybe there's some consideration depending on how strong he does in Miami, but we're going to need to see quite a strong performance to consider him into our short-term thoughts. So short-term and long-term, I don't have too much hope for Hülkenberg. Hulkenberg at this time. Probably looks as if he's trending towards a free fall towards the floor of 4.5 million. So maybe he becomes a more interesting asset closer to that time. So potentially another 4 or 5 races away.
So lastly, moving into our constructors for the sales, I've chosen to put Red Bull in here because really, from a team perspective, it's really just Max kind of pulling through at this moment in time. Despite Yuki's DNF in Saudi, they're still looking decent enough for a budget increase in Miami. Over 5 points for a small, 28 for a 0.3. So again, you're really hoping for Max to really disturb the top of the order there and get a front row, maybe get a sprint win. Who knows what he'll do in the race. So from a budget and points, there's definitely some potential there, but certainly a lot less risk associated with the Mercedes Ferrari, considering that they could even absorb DNFs and still sort of see an increase. So Red Bull would be a sell for me. And until we kind of see some of their upside with maybe pit stops, maybe Yuki kind of pulling in some points, they're not really on my radar for right now. But you never know what might happen with upgrades as the season goes on. If Max continues to outperform the car, then we could keep an eye on where they go. And then lastly, my last sell for a constructor would be the Kick Sauber team. Again, needing over 25 points to see an increase of 0.2. But they are valued at 4.8 million right now, anticipated to get another large decrease of 0.3, 0.6, which would then put them at the floor for 4.5 million, which when they get to that point, I don't know, they kind of maybe sort of fill that asset that is the cheapest asset, not going to lose you any budget. So if we're really looking to pinch the pennies and drop back down into an single A tier constructor basis, then maybe Kit come into that insurance policy, similar to how we've been using Bortoleto, which would then free up a lot more budget, probably releasing up to 5 million to put back into your drivers, particularly. So whether you're looking to increase into a more valuable B tier driver like a Albon or a Sainz, maybe looking to increase from a Piastri into a Norris, then Kick might form some of those, might be some of those teams going forward. But we will have to see how things shake out. Now, for those of you who wanted to just sort of see where a lot of this information comes from, so definitely point you in the direction of the f1fantasytools.com budget builder. I know some of you like to look at my videos and pause these for the information. So here are the constructors on screen. And then here are the drivers on screen too. I know my face is kind of covering up the little bit of Tsunoda and Hulk right now, but as I discussed earlier, they shouldn't be part of your teams at this moment in time, so don't worry too much about that. Now, doing some shout outs to end this video, looking into my league, the Luke F1 Fantasy League. We have a new leader on top of the rankings. We have Rodrigo with Team Wazadeka that has taken the lead with 1,087 points. So well done to you, sir, for your performance this week. You went with a team of Piastri, Antonelli, Ocon, Hajar, Behrman, McLaren, and Haas. So you got a pretty stellar team here. Definitely you would have got a lot of budget from that in Saudi. I think you're set up quite nicely for Miami for whichever way you decide to go. So you've only got a 3-point lead on me, so you don't need to tell me exactly what your plans are, but I think I might have an idea of what you may be doing, Rodrigo. So excited to see where your team goes next week. And then a special shout out to Mrs. Luke F1 Fantasy, Amy there, who for the week of Saudi, she actually topped the league with 225 points. So despite the name of her team, Better Step on the Gasly, she avoided Gasly this week. I went with a team of Piastri, Hajar, Bortoleto, Doohan, Behrman, McLaren, and Mercedes. So for someone who's quite prone to picking the DNFs on a week-to-week basis, she escaped one this week and ended up as the week winner. So congratulations to her. And I will give a shout out to Jay with Delament Sports F1, who took 3rd spot this week with 215 points. I believe your team avoided DNFs this week as well. Jay is also a F1 fantasy content creator, and his channel Delament Sports. So if you haven't checked his channel out yet, I would definitely recommend going over and checking out his weekly videos. They are definitely worth a watch. And if you're looking to get into the league, there's my league code up on screen. I would love to see you join. Would love to get some more banter going. And again, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. But that pretty much wraps up this video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate you watching right up until the end here. If you're still watching, you're still interested, I do plan on getting a Miami team selection video out probably Wednesday or Thursday, and then probably a second one, my final thoughts following sprint qualifying. So turn on your likes, like this video, turn on your subscriptions, and we'll catch you on the next one.